Welcome to Fargo Talks Fargo, an unofficial podcast on the FX television show. Fargo Talks Fargo is hosted by me, Bill Lempe, and my buddy Sharpie. Sponsors for this season of Fargo Talks Fargo are TAG, celebrating Fargo and the Midwest community through t-shirts, art, and graphics. For more information, visit tagfargo.com. And Fargo Brewing Company's Wood Chipper India Pale Ale with its bold hop flavor and velvety body. Grab a pint or visit them online at fargobrewing.com. All right, so here we are, Fargo Talks Fargo, another special episode that we're throwing in the mix here, and we are really excited to have Jeff Russo with us, who is the mastermind behind all the music that makes you feel all the feels when you are watching Fargo this season.
Feel all the feels.
That's it. Thanks for joining us today. We're so happy you were able to get your schedule together. That sounds such a like, I'm glad you could get your shit together and talk to us, Jeff.
It's together, kind of. I'm glad that I was able to get it together. I think
we're feeling pretty scatterbrained on our end because we don't want the magic to end.
It's over.
Well, for you,
yep.
No, but after tonight, it's over.
It's gonna be so sad.
You didn't have to say it like that.
Yeah.
Well, it's definitive. That's why they call it a mini-series.
I'm just glad. I'm just glad you could say it in person and not over text.
Oh well,
that would have been just terrible.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard for me too. Like I've been watching, and as the episodes sort of clock by, I realize it's getting closer and closer to really being the end. And what I can't believe is here we are. Today is the day. The finale is going to air, and everybody's going to know what happens. And then I'm just going to be sort of back to
life.
Back to reality.
Oh wow! So before we started recording, we already made a Paula Abdul reference, and now this is just going to get better as we go.
Soul to soul, right?
Yeah. Oh, I want to go to a dance right now.
The 80s and 90s, man.
I want to tight roll my jeans.
Right.
So I just want to kick off here, and we're gonna roll through just some questions, but feel free to just like divert any direction you feel. But I want to just like step a little bit back just from Fargo, and I'm personally curious because I've seen it mentioned, but how do you get from being in a really popular rock band, Tonic, to where you are now? And I'm not saying it's a bad transition. I mean, it's just like you don't hear it a lot, I don't think. But you're doing it really well is the other thing. I mean, I know there's people who have transitioned. I'm not going to say anything, but I was like, oh, I'm doing this movie, and then you watching like that sucks. But yeah, how did that transition happen for you?
It's interesting. We were taking a bit of a break. The band was taking a bit of a break. Well, first of all, I was in a movie. Back in 2000, I was asked to act in a movie and play a guitar player, sort of dumb rock guy, and I was like, well, sure, that's easy. Because I was an actor when I was a kid. So I had an idea as to, what it meant to be a part of narrative and be a part of telling a story. So I was doing this movie, and the producer and director asked me to come to the composer's studio and play guitar on the score because they knew that I was a guitar player, obviously. So I did that, and I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. Like making music, but you're making your music specifically for what you're looking at. Cut to a couple years later, the band took a bit of a break, and my dear friend Wendy Melvoin of the duo Wendy and Lisa from Prince's band, they are film and television composers now. We were talking, and they asked me if I wanted to go to work for them. So I went to work for them. I just sort of watched them do their thing, and then I started writing some music for them, and that was sort of where it all began. So my transition was really due to someone else's transition, like
right.
And you just start doing it. Like it just felt very natural to me. Like being able to write music in this situation felt very natural because as a songwriter, I'm constantly thinking about what the lyric is going to do and how to affect what the lyric is going to do or stay out of the way of what the lyric is going to do. And I sort of look at the narrative and the dialogue is the same principle. You sort of write music like you're writing a song. So it felt really natural to me. The whole transition has felt really natural to me. And now I feel like this is sort of my primary thing that I really love to do. And the other thing, we still play. I'm going out to play a show this weekend, as a matter of fact, in Tampa with the band. We continue to play shows and continue to make records. For me, it's two sides of a coin. Like I get to write music and have fun with my band, and then write music and have fun with Fargo. Or
is it hard to go back and forth between those two types of things?
No, I don't find it to be hard. I actually find it to be pretty cool. Like I get to do this thing for a little bit, and then I get to go do that thing for a little bit. It makes it so I get to have really the best of all the worlds. I get to go and play rock star for a little bit, and then I get to come back and just play TV composer, film composer. It's a different world.
So does this sort of resurgence of television shows and miniseries and sort of anthology series, is this exciting to you now because a lot of this transition is happening from Hollywood to TV?
Well, yeah. First of all, yes, extremely exciting. I mean, but in terms of Fargo, it's like the quality of the show is so high, it's so good that it makes what I do very easy. And it's not the task itself isn't easy, but it's just easy to manage because I just loved every note of every score piece that I wrote for the show, because I would be looking at stuff that I was like, this is so good. I can't wait for next week. I can't wait for the next episode. I can't wait for it. And I got to write music that I frankly haven't really been able to write for television because, it hasn't been right for the different shows that I've been doing. And this sort of takes a different approach to filmmaking for TV than most shows. It's more in the prestige television world, like Mad Men and Breaking Bad and these really, 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 really well thought out narrative dramas that really tell a story from beginning to end and allow all the people who are involved in creating the art to really do their best work.
It's interesting to me, too, that you bring up something like Mad Men, and we've talked about this throughout the season of our podcast. As you know, it's Fargo Talks Fargo, and so the funny part is neither of us are in Fargo today. I still live there. I just happen to be out of town, and Sharpie lives in Colorado now, but we both grew up in Fargo. But I was talking to somebody about Mad Men, too, and it was one of the first shows not first, but just a show I was watching where I was really like I knew that there was a lot of use of silence,
right?
As opposed to, and I've bagged on it before, so I'm just going to do it one more time before the podcast is over. It's like it's the opposite of what I would call the Grey's Anatomy soundtrack type of TV show, where it's like, hey, this. Don't get me wrong, you can launch careers and make money off it, but it's just such an obvious like push to like, hey, feel this way, and here's the song, and we're gonna cut this chunk of lyrics out and slam it in there because it fits. And if you listen to the whole song later, you're like, wait, isn't that a breakup song? And you're like, well, whatever, they made love to it, it's fine. But I think that's what I've also really loved about watching a show like Mad Men, and this is what I also really appreciate about watching Fargo is I appreciate where there isn't music, and it allows the actual dialogue to come through and really showcase itself, and then the music that you've been working with is just, to me, is just there to just like completely hold it up when it needs,
Well, silence makes whatever music you use way more important. And silence has a way of drawing in tension and drawing the drama into something that no music can do. And a lot of times shows don't utilize that because it feels like things slow down, but it doesn't necessarily slow down.
Mm-hmm.
But the silence, the way we use silence, really does make the music have more impact. If you really want to have impact with music, there has to be a significant amount of silence prior to the music coming in.
Yeah.
Or else the music has no impact at all and it's just wallpaper. And that works sometimes. Sometimes that works and sometimes that doesn't work. But in a situation where the narrative and the storytelling is the main thing that you want to get across, not the, oh, it's got to be sad here. Oh, it's got to be like really anxious and tense here. If it's really just about telling the story, then using the silence is really, really effective.
Yeah.
And the same goes for, I'm a graphic designer myself. The same can happen visually, where more of a lack of something can have just as much of an impact, just as it does through audio or the score. And kind of speaking along those terms, as an artist that's making a living, you kind of have one thing on your plate, and that's a deadline. We know that Fargo's shooting schedule was pretty short compared to a lot of productions, and you're talking about television. You've got a timeline that you've got to hit deadlines. Is that really challenging when you're trying to create these scores and you're doing something you love and you're putting all your heart into it? Is that something that's really challenging, or how does that affect you as an artist?
I treated Fargo like a movie. So I started writing a lot of the music last summer, way before we started shooting.
Okay.
Noah, the showrunner, originally gave me just some, direction, just some descriptors that he was thinking about what the music should sound like, and gave me sort of a brief outline of the characters in the story. And then after that meeting, I immediately went to my studio and started writing what became the theme of the show.
Sure.
And then over the next, I would say, 6 to 8 weeks, I wrote 11 more pieces of music for him that I kept sending to him, and he would listen to and ruminate, and then he would send me scripts, and I would read them, and then I sort of wrote more music based on the scripts. And I had written and recorded most of the themes you hear in the first 3 or 4 episodes before we ever were finished shooting the first episode.
Okay.
That way, I had a lot more leeway to create all the rest of the season. As the themes start to adjust themselves and change as the characters shift over the course of the 10 episodes, I have to adjust and write new themes and write new cues as the whole season goes. And because I used an orchestra every episode, and I had to do an orchestral recording every week, basically, it would have been a lot more difficult, not undoable, but a lot more difficult to write that much orchestral music in 4 days.
Right.
So, and the other thing that we did that is not really how we've done it prior, is I was writing music to our very first cut. I wasn't waiting for a locked picture, and I would rely a lot on our music editor to help me conform cues to the new picture. So I would be writing, Noah would send me a cut, and then he would call me and say, we really need something different here, and we really need something that's a little bit lighter here or a little bit of this here. And then I would write, and then as the picture would change, we would start editing the music that I've been writing. And then I'd go in and record the orchestra. So in treating it that way, it allowed us to really feel like and achieve making a 10-hour movie as opposed to 10 one-hour television shows.
Yeah. You bring that up too about watching the edits as they occur, and I actually had a question about this, and I was interested in understanding the idea of how many of those edits did you get in the process, and were there ever times where you were writing something to that and then eventually they came back from the editing and they were like, we cut this and we moved this around,
Sure.
or I mean, I guess in a weird way I'm asking, how often did Noah and the editors kind of nail it the first time out, where it's just a lot of refinement? I have a feeling there was a lot of times that happened.
I would say that it was mostly refinement.
Yeah.
As it meant. I remember very specifically in the second episode, I'd gotten a cut and I was writing and this and that, and then Noah called me, and Noah had been, Skyping with me because he was up in Calgary where they were shooting. And he called me and he said, Jeff? I said, yeah. He said, I'm blowing shit up right now. I'm blowing shit up. I said, what do you mean? And it was like the edit completely changed. It was like everything was different. This was over here, and this was over here, and this was gone, and this is that, and this is shorter, and this one's longer, and this is... So it's like we changed everything. And it was, again, it was like that happens when you're making stuff, and, all of a sudden you're like, I have a better way to do this, and then we have a better way to do this. And then we end up with the opening to episode 2, which is, in my opinion, a very unexpected, really great thing. The opening with the drums, and you see wrench and numbers, and that's the opening. Was a pretty pretty spectacular feeling for me when I first watched it all to picture, and I was like, oh yeah, this is awesome. It's great. So
that is something I kind of wanted to touch on, was that a lot of characters do seem to have some themes that sort of follow them along, and the most obvious, I think, is wrench and numbers. That becomes their like theme song almost, and I've noticed people talking about it online. What was the inspiration behind their theme song, if you will, I guess, the opening to episode 2?
The inspiration was talking to Noah, and Noah saying, like, why don't we do something percussion, like just drums or something? And I was like, that's great. Let me see what I can do. And we did it, and that's what we came up with. They're just when you put just percussion or just drums somewhere, it stands out. And these two characters really needed to be separate from everything and yet a part of it. They needed to have that swagger that only Malvo has. Like, Malvo has that same kind of swagger in the way I fashioned the upright bass playing the walking bass line that Malvo has. That's sort of swagger-esque. They needed it in a different way. And I think like that sort of achieved that goal. But I lend most of the credit for that to Noah. Noah had this great idea. It should be just drums. I was like, okay, let's do that.
I was just gonna say that one of my favorite parts of the entire season was when that theme song came back and Wrench busted out of his car, just shooting blindly into the white snow at Lorne Malvo, and that bass line kind of just chugging along was just perfect to me.
Thank you very much.
I had a question about that bass line too, because I was doing this thing today while I was like, I had multiple things going on. I was like, I gotta try. I was like, I wonder if I can rewatch like 6 or so episodes. Couldn't do it. Just gonna go ahead and say that.
Right.
But what I noticed, what I feel like I noticed, and you can correct me and tell me I'm totally full of shit on this. I feel like about partway through the season, as Lester seems to kind of grow in his own little machismo moments, like Did you eventually lend a little bit of that walking bass line to Lester then?
Yes, and that cue is called Lester as Malvo.
Okay, because
I think that happened. Yes,
because I think we'd actually like to talk about the moment I think that happened, and we have some notes on that. But I'm gonna backpedal for a second, and because we wanted to ask about this because we've been talking about we've talked about the music on and off the entire podcast. We both really like music, and we like the way things work with that. And who helped choose the non-original music? Was that all you, or was that a combination of you and Noah and the music editor? Or
all of the non-original music, all of the songs that you hear, 100% are picked by Noah.
Oh wow!
Noah is very well. First of all, what makes my job really easy in working with Noah is that he's a musician, so we speak the same language. Like, really? He can call me and say, we really need a cue here that's more minor. Like, let's stay away from major. Let's be it a little more minor. Or, maybe you could like modulate a little bit. Like, he has the vernacular. So I feel like that in that communication, it's very easy for me to understand what it is he needs and wants. Mm-hmm. We have, very similar taste in music as well. Like, so it just makes that collaboration so much easier than it has been for me in the past. I mean, when you're working with people who are not musicians, it's just difficult to translate sometimes what people want, and sometimes that's like takes a pass or two at getting it,
mm-hmm.
But the songs are all picked by Noah. Usually he's sitting there, like, we'll be in the edit room. He'll be on his iPhone and he'll be just like, searching some stuff, and he'll hear something. He'll be like, what about this? And I'll play it, and everybody will be like, "Oh my God, that's genius!"
Because there's some stuff on there that I just was like, "Okay, I need an answer to this." Like you said, you two had similar styles and tastes in music, and I'm like, so you're telling me you're both big Eden Abez fans?
Well, let me tell you something about that. Interestingly enough, Noah called me in to play that, and when I watched that, and I I had never heard that song before. When I saw the end of 102 and that came on, at the end of the show, after we had watched it, I looked at Noah and I said, "You're a genius. That's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. I've never seen anything like that. I've never seen, I mean, you've heard songs like that, you've seen visuals like that, but you've never seen and heard those two things together."
It's almost like there's, now that I've seen it, there's no other song you could put to that and it would work. It's actually the only song that, like, it's the puzzle piece, it fits, and you can't, there's no possible, you couldn't write a song that works. You couldn't make, it's just, I'm sorry, it's just so.
There was a conversation about that. Like, is there something else? Could there be something else? And in the end, we all knew there could not be anything else other than that. Yeah, that was like, you know, genius beyond genius in terms of picking that and having how that worked with the picture and what you were seeing. It was just so incongruous. So great.
It's so fun. It really was. But I know that there was some moments where I thought I saw you guys talking online though, where because were you playing the uke and then it was somebody else? Who was Noah whistling? Was that him?
So we had talked about, he was like, we need something different for episode 8 because episode 8 is there's a big shift in episode. So we need to start out with something different. And I was like, well, what about ukulele? And he was like, and maybe like a whistle. And we had worked on something before where I had done something with a whistle that we both really liked. So he actually sent me himself whistling on his iPhone. And that indeed is what you hear in the score. I took what he emailed me and then I played the ukulele around it. This is perfect. And then, of course, I wrote the rest of the orchestra comes in later, and it's the whole big thing.
Yeah, and I like that. I remember telling Sharpie, I said, I feel like we're like having a little bit of just like, you know, because I mean, it's like Lester's cleaning the house out, and he's like going on his own little vacation from his life that he used to live, and you've got the joyful, right? And the steel. Ode to Joy. Thank you. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Ode to Joy. Which was so much fun to do. I had a steel player come into the studio, and I did an arrangement of what I believe to be one of the classic Beethoven pieces. And it really did. It worked out so well for just the feeling that we wanted to convey with Lester cleaning house and sort of making this really big transition. And in episode 8. He really does make a big transition. Yeah. And then of course, later in episode 8, we skip forward an entire year. And then everything starts to change. Yeah.
The tempo of that steel player, that, you know what I mean? It wasn't perfect in a way. It was just, it kind of had this like you just like kind of trotting along.
Yeah.
I like the way it had its own kind of little bit of light swing to it.
As it should.
The right way.
You know, things in Fargo are never perfect. So nothing is perfect. Score, nothing can be perfect. It has to all be a little bit like, oh yeah, it has to feel real because the way it happens in Fargo, it's all real, based on true story.
How did the I'm sure you've been asked this a bunch of times. So hopefully we're not steering too close to like the questions. You're like, oh, here's this question again. The sleigh bells. I mean, I know it's Christmas time and it's bleak and winter but the same time, it's just like this thing that just constantly like floats in there, and you're like, ooh, am I gonna hear it now? Nope.
Wait, I felt it was really a great tool, you know, to draw out tension where you wouldn't expect it. It's you know, so if something bad is gonna happen and then you hear sleigh bells, you know.
Is that foreshadowing into Lorne Malvo's transition to Bad Santa?
Well, yeah, that's I think it's Bad Santa 3 at this point.
Yeah.
You know, we all felt like, because I had put sleigh bells originally in the first piece of music in the main theme, that it would be an effective tool to use. I use two things. I use sleigh bells was mainly for Lester, and the timpani. There's just these low timpani hits for Malvo. And as we get sort of later and later in the season, it sort of crosses and changes where the sleigh bells go more for Malvo and the timp hits then go more for Lester, as Lester makes this transition from meek to, well, not so meek. And it was just a really, really great way of doing something that was totally opposite of what you would expect. You know, when we were first talking about the score, and Noah said, "I really want it to be cold and lonesome and barren sounding." I was like, "Well, cold, okay, sleigh bells dashing through the snow. We're cold. We know that. But to use it for evil is,
and it works.
To me, is what makes." And that's what makes Fargo Fargo. You know what I mean? Like that's what really sort of gives it that twist.
That hint of joy with just a little bit of blood in the background.
And that's really the thing about the score. It's like there's this emotional and beautiful element playing against this really, really awful background. Just the evil of people and the menace that's happening in the show. But yet there's this sort of beautiful sounding score behind it. It's very sort of counterintuitive and against what we're playing, against what you're maybe seeing or feeling, for that matter.
Is it? Can you confirm or deny whether or not that soundtrack is going to be released?
July 1st.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Sony Classics is releasing the soundtrack. And oddly enough, one of the only cues that I neglected to put on the soundtrack is the opening for 8, the uke and the whistle. It didn't end up on the soundtrack. There just wasn't enough room. I mean, I put 28 tracks on there. When you're talking about 10 hours worth of original music, well, it's not really 10 hours. Maybe it's more like there's a good 8 hours of original music. Choosing what goes and what doesn't was kind of hard. But I'm going to put that one up online somewhere so people can still hear it.
So I think all along, I mean, when they premiered the show when it played here at the Fargo Theater.
Mm-hmm.
It's our big theater, and if you ever look up Fargo, you're gonna see a big neon marquee that says Fargo. And
right.
But it was so funny because it was like the minute your music started, it was just like applause, like because it was like that opening sequence in the very first episode when it all started really happening. That's when like the whole crowd was like, "Fuck yeah, it's happening!" And they were so excited. And it's been that way for us the whole time. But if you went back and probably listened to our episode 7 thing, because this is the one I kind of want to just dive into just to get a little bit more from you on it. And there are so many good parts, but like I said, we can't. It's 10 hours. We don't want to take that much of your time, and you've got better things to do than talk to us yokels. But episode 7 is the one where we talked about what happened, and then I think it was Sharpie who actually was just like immediately the conversation like skewed music for a minute. We're like, and the score, the holy
episode
shit,
7,
the score,
the music was all I could think about. Really, I mean that beginning, like after
Lester.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, no, that was big for me.
And that split second of silence right before it all just comes crashing down I watched it like 20 times.
So that was where I was kind of nerding out a little bit on it and trying to, because I mean, I know earlier on there's a little bit of it, correct? But it really starts when Chaz gets the call from Kitty and he's about to slam the phone down.
Right.
And it's just, I even talk about, you're talking about silence. You have that build of a Chaz running up the driveway and shit is just starting to like go into like pseudo slow-mo. And you even go to silence there for a minute.
Yeah.
Well, that's happening. And then it comes back again. And I just, that moment where it's happening like that is just pretty, I don't know, I thought it was pretty awesome outside of watching Chaz get spit on by Kitty.
That whole sequence, it was funny when we first watched that, we all looked at one another and said, can we really wait 10 minutes in an episode before we go to our title? We waited 10 minutes from the opening of the show till you see, our opening title. Yeah. And as we were, that entire beginning, the entire lead up from when Chaz gets the phone call and he's running to his house to see that, I don't think music even begins to play until they open the gun
cabinet.
Yep.
And then music starts to play.
Mm-hmm. Because
Big-
before that, it's like it almost sounds like you've got like an electric guitar and you're like pushing
Yeah, a
the
little
pick
bit.
on the pickups, like touching it.
And I actually created that with a saw, with a real saw.
What?
Vibrating saw. It's pretty cool.
Really?
But the next scene when Lester's in
Snaps his fingers.
right, and when he's telling the story to Bill, and then Bill is believing him, and then he gets to walk out. That's the beginning, really the beginning of the Lester swagger. When
Yeah.
Lester walks out, basically he's convinced everybody that it's his brother who did everything. And then he walks past, and that's when the yell happens, and Lester, and the big Fargo orchestral splat. Which when we heard that in the mix, all like 18 people who were at the final mix all stood up and was like, "Ah!" We were all.
It was. I'm not gonna lie. If I showed you my notes right now, it's in all caps. It says huge, fucking huge. Because I thought that like it just beautifully from that single line. You worked your way into what I think was like some octave pairs, and then there was like a fourth coming in there with like a flute or something. I don't know. I was like even listening to it back, and I was like, then you had some strings, then a little bit of brass, then the bass comes in, and then eventually building like that emotional eeriness to that. Chaz yelling. I could watch that scene over and over again, and then that punch.
Yeah,
and it ends just as strong. With Molly just literally flipping shit in the Bemidji police parking lot.
Right. Yep. Writing the score for this show has been creatively I can't even think of anything else that I've done that's been as creatively satisfying, because I get to do that, and then you see that, and it's just so cathartic. It's so satisfying to watch that and hear that and have written that. It's really great.
Well, go ahead, Matt. Sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say, well, you did an awesome job, and we couldn't talk enough about your work. And is there anything that you'd want to tell us about, like future projects you might have coming up, or anything like that?
I'm planning on making a record with the band at some point.
Okay.
I've just finished working on a show called Power, which just premiered on Starz Network.
Okay.
And that will go for the next 8 episodes. And then I'm taking a little bit of time, doing some work in the studio, taking a little bit of time before I have to start writing some other stuff for a little town up north.
Who's behind Power again? Is that
her name is Courtney Agbo.
Okay.
And David Knoller. David Knoller was the executive producer on Big Love and Carnival.
Oh, okay.
And 50 Cent.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Those are the peeps.
Those are the people doing the doing.
Doing things, yeah.
Well, we can't thank you enough for taking your time out of your day to talk with some crazy dudes like us from Fargo, and yeah, it's been amazing, and we wish you the best of luck. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Are you the guys who are always posting like, why do they call it Fargo? It's not even in Fargo. We don't even in Fargo.
Nah, I don't think that's us.
That's not us. We're also we've steered a little bit clear. There's been a lot of talk from people who are from here who are also writing about it because they're pissed because Bemidji and Duluth are not close.
Yeah, like you can't drive there. Like it's not.
It's like 4 fucking hours. You don't just be like, hey, I'm gonna run over to Duluth, and Duluth has also got like a couple buildings that are maybe like 7 or 8 stories.
Yeah, did those people ever watch a little show called 24?
Yeah.
In 24, Jack Bauer would be in Mar Vista, and then he'd have to be in downtown Los Angeles, and he would make that drive in like 8 minutes.
Yeah. Not to mention that his daughter could get kidnapped like 3 times in 24 hours.
But in reality, that drive would be like an hour and a half. You know what I mean? No way. You know what that's called? It's called creative license.
Yeah. That's why we kind of steer clear of that.
It's not, and we've mentioned that we brought it up a few times just to say, okay, here, we're not idiots. We're from here. We've seen it. We don't care.
But who cares? Yeah, like who cares? Like why care? Like just watch the show, right? Like it's fun.
Yeah.
Just enjoy yourself.
Right.
Darn
Yeah,
it.
if you're going to get like caught up in the details,
Jeez.
too many details. I mean, like find me a television show or a feature film that doesn't have a continuity error in it. And I'll give you a whole lot of money that I don't have.
Continuity, or is it about it's all fiction. It's
Yeah.
not real. Like we're not making a National Geographic
No, this is real. It says so at the beginning of every episode.
based on a true story.
Yes. Which,
Changed
by
all-
the way, is part of a really sad story around here if you ever look it up.
I know the story where the woman went to go
came
the
here
money.
from Japan, and
And
so
she
that
died.
that literally she died like I am probably 100 yards from where she died right now.
Oh, that's terrible.
I am at one of the many lakes in the region that has a body that's been floating in it at the
Wait.
bottom from Numbers and Wrench.
So you're actually out there by the lake?
I am. I'd have to. It's probably hard to see out the window. So it's like there's way out those windows. There's a lake.
Okay, but
Mhm.
it's not frozen over now.
It's 80 degrees right now.
Right.
It does happen.
You couldn't shoot Fargo in the summer. It wouldn't work.
There are swings here though. I mean,
Right.
there was a swing once when it got down like this spring where it was like 38 one day, and like a day later it was like 70.
Right.
But that's the
Yeah.
way it goes.
What are you gonna do?
Well,
Cold.
I can't wait to listen more tonight. Oh, and side note, I also pretty sure I've lost 20% of the hearing in my left ear from going to one of your wife's concerts.
Oh, that's very possible.
It was the first time I went home and it was like, that's why they wear earplugs.
Right.
That's the deal.
You got to be careful.
Super side note for people who are just like, what is he talking about? But
Yes, my wife is in a little band called Veruca Salt.
yeah, it was a great show though. It was fun.
I'm sure it was. Was it up? Where was it?
It was at back then the place was called Playmakers Pavilion, and it was
So it was in Fargo.
basically- Yeah, in Fargo, and it's basically a Quonset. Do you know what a Quonset is?
No.
A Quonset's just a giant shitty steel building.
Oh, okay.
So I can tell you the sound in there. You could have the best guy running sound, but there's a lot of I'm making hand gestures of bouncing waves of sound off aluminum walls, and
Oh, I know it well.
but it was pretty intense, and I was right on the left side of the stage in front of a huge stack.
Nice.
Yeah, you could only talk to me in my right ear for a couple days.
What?
There was a
Again?
lot of what? I was like, "Do I still hear this?" Like, I don't know what hertz that was at, but it was tough for a couple days. But and that's what we call here at Fargo Talks Fargo a rat hole.
Nice.
Down the rat hole.
Well, we look forward to we look forward to more projects.
It's a big one tonight. You guys, people won't expect what you guys are going to see tonight.
Cool.
We're gonna lose our shit, aren't we?
Well, I don't know about that, but it's it's definitely not an expected. It's not you won't expect what's going to happen.
You mean we're gonna jump backwards a year in time?
No,
Okay.
not that unexpected. And there's no time jump in this particular one.
Which, by the way, brilliant play in there. I
I
liked
thought-
it.
I thought it was a really fantastic choice.
Yeah.
Really was a fantastic choice to go forward a year, and because time goes by, things happen.
Not every case gets solved in one episode. Life isn't Law and Order.
That's right. You must have talked to Noah.
I would, you know what? I'd give my leg to talk to Noah because we have seriously, we've tweeted at him and we're like, I have so many questions.
Yeah.
I have so many things.
He's a
I
busy
wanna
man
know.
now.
Yeah.
He is. He's a busy man. There's a lot of stuff going on. If you catch my drift.
I can't wait to see what
I
you
like
two
it.
do in Fargo season 2.
I don't know anything about Fargo season 2.
Mm-mm. Us
It's
neither.
about it's as elusive as True Detectives season 2.
Is there a True Detective season 2?
I just everybody tweets out these like funny pictures of like
Right.
couples on the internet, like not couples, but you know what I mean, two people together, like season 2, True Detective.
Well, let's wrap it up. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you take care. We can't wait to see you tonight. Thanks so much for taking time.
Yep.
All right, take care.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.